All right, so now it's time for us to transition and look at control flow. So we need to find ways in which we can control the flow of our program. Now, when we want to control the flow, again, all goes back to the basics of if some variable is true or false, we want to do something. The first thing we're going to learn about is the conditional statements. I'm going to put here conditional statements. As the name implies, it's some sort of condition. It's meaning if something is true, then we're going to do something. If that's not true, then we're going to do something else. I guess that's the idea, really. So how do we express these conditional statements here? You will see that the conditional statements, they require two things. First of all, these comparison operators. So we have to compare something and use the comparison operators. And then we have to then create the actual expressions and the actual ramification or conditions. What I mean by that is that we can go ahead and create what we call an if statement. An if statement allows us to then create that control flow using conditional statements, which of course come from comparison operators. So I'm going to say if, so that's a keyword, and you can see right away it gives us some sort of a framework how to use this. So if I just say enter like that, look at that. Aha, it says you have to pass in a condition and then you can pass the code that will run when this condition is met. Now this is a very important concept because in your whole programming career, most of the times this is what you're going to be doing. Just creating conditions around things. If you think about it, if you want to show something to the user on your application or program, you can say if the user clicks this button, then show them what they need to see. If not, then nothing happens. You see, there is a condition there. So everything real in computing, you can trace it down to the basics of conditions. All right, so in this case here, I'm going to say if A, right? Remember variable A at the top here? I'm going to say is greater than B. Then what we want to do, if you just go ahead and say tab, is going to go highlight the code. So that is not actual code. It's just telling us developers, this is where you write a code. What do you want to happen? I want something to happen. I want us to say print. I'm going to print something inside of here. I'm going to say, yes, indeed. Something like that. Let's save this. Let's go ahead and run. Yes, indeed is showing because indeed A is greater than B. So 199 is greater than 9. If I reverse this is less, you imagine that nothing is going to happen, right? It's not running anything there. There's no print here. Now, here's the thing. This works great, but because we want to have some sort of flow, this can get into a halt, which we don't want. We can continue our flow here. So we can say if A is less than B, run this. Also notice that we have this new thing, braces there. The braces you're going to see a lot, right? What the braces do is just like a block of code. We're saying here, if this statement returns true, then run this block of code that is going to be enclosed inside of these curly braces. Now, to complete our flow, I'm going to go ahead and put an else statement right after the end of these braces here. So we're saying here, if this is true, run this. In case that this is not true, we're going to just do something else. What is it that we're going to do? Notice I added the curly braces there to say, okay, there's a block of code, whatever I'm going to write inside here. I can write 1,000 lines of code here, of course, and that will run. I'm going to say print, nope, like that. Let's go ahead and run this whole statement there. And it says nope, okay? Because indeed A is not less than B, because A is actually greater, okay? You can see now we can do all sort of things. For instance, I can go ahead and say var money bank is equal to 100. Look what I can do now. I can say if money bank is greater than, for instance, 78, I want this to say, yes, I am rich. Else is going to say, oh no, I'm poor. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and run this. You know what's going to happen. It's going to say, yes, I'm rich because MoneyBank has indeed $100. Let's assume this is $100. And because we know now a lot about currency, and if we want to be more precise, we can actually make this, let's make this a double explicitly. And I can go ahead and say .0 there. Doesn't matter, but it's still going to run. But we want to just make sure that we have everything correctly here, because usually money or currency, it has decimal points. Doesn't matter, but I just wanted to go back and show you, kind of reuse what we've learned so far. Okay, so there we go. So many things you can do now because you have this capability of using conditional statements, which, remember, they just need to have some sort of condition that we have to pass in here in order for it to work. Now, the other thing we can do also is we can make this if statement a little bit more complicated, meaning if we want to make sure that this if statement goes through a line of conditions, we can put together all of those conditions if we want to do so. What I mean by that is follow. I can create another variable here, say var. I'm going to say has retirement plan. I'm going to say is equal to false, like that. Now, I can say if money bank is greater than $78, but also I can say and, because I want to make sure that I actually create another statement inside of this condition here. So to make sure that, okay, if these two things are indeed true, then I can say I'm rich.